Well, hello again. Good to see you once again. Today I want to give you a bit of an update on something from last year. Now, those of you who were subscribed to the channel last year may remember that around the middle of the year I had a selection criteria for you for the NRL, Australia's National Rugby League competition, that seemed to work quite well with hard and soft staking. Now, I brought that to you last year. I wanted to give you a bit of an update on that and also show you how it can be applied to the AFL. Interestingly, though, I do have a little bit of a minor change to the selection criteria, which I think improves it a little bit. Now, when I brought it to you last year, I figured it probably would need a minor adjustment at some stage, but I didn't really know where that stage was. It was going to take a little bit of time to work that out, but I think that's figured out now, so I can give you a bit of an update, and hopefully that helps you throughout this year. So, to recap, if we have a look at a typical AFL weekly schedule, this will apply for the NRL as well, we'll go through that in a minute, but if we have a look at a typical AFL weekly schedule, you can see normally there's 9 games. Now, the way this works is that I need to be able to group the matches into a few groups. I'm not betting on every single match, and I need to be able to group them so that I can pick the most suitable match out of the group. So how do I do that? So you can see here this schedule, 9 matches. So let's have a look further on, and we can see that we group it into a few groups. So days that are standalone, in that they only have one match, they get grouped in with another day. So in this case, you can see we've got the Thursday night, we've got the Friday night grouped together, we've got all of the Saturday games grouped together, and then the Sunday games grouped together. For the NRL, it's something similar, but before I go to the NRL, I wanted to show you what this would look like for a less normal round. So let's have a look at the Easter schedule for the AFL. And you can see here that there's also a Monday game in there. It's actually one game less. They've got a couple buys in this round for Easter. So a slightly unusual schedule. We've got the Thursday and then 2 Fridays grouped together. We've got the 2 Saturday games grouped together. The 2 Sundays grouped with the Monday game. So when we get public holidays that have a standalone game, that generally needs to be grouped in with whatever day was nearest. Similar thing for the NRL, really. If we look, we've got the NRL having 8 games, in a week. They will be 9 soon, I think, when they add some teams, but then the AFL's adding teams as well, so who knows how many games we'll have per competition in a few years' time. But the NRL, basically, we group it the same. Normally there's a Thursday night game that gets grouped in with 2 Friday games. There's 3 Saturday games that get grouped, and then 2 Sunday games which get grouped. So that's the usual grouping. Now, from within each of those groups, I'd be looking at what match is most suitable for the selection criteria and betting on that. So generally what I want to do is look at the round before it starts so I can assess what the grouping is. I don't get caught by surprise with a random day that has one game, or caught by surprise with a day that has fewer games than I'm expecting. So look at this ahead of time. Then with these groups, if the start of the group is an evening, then I'll usually look at it in the afternoon of that day and look at the group then. If the start of the group is in the afternoon, I'll usually look in the morning of that day. So you can see here, for example, with the NRL schedule, the Thursday, 8 p.m. being the start of the group, I'd normally look at that group on the Thursday afternoon. The next group, Saturday 3 p.m. start, I'd be looking at that Saturday morning. So let's have a look at the selection criteria, if we can. So this is the selection criteria I showed you last year. And at the time it was working quite well. Now this is the lowest priced non-favourite in the group of matches. So looking at teams that are not favourites, so they're the outsider, but they're the lowest priced of the outsiders, so they're somewhere close. Thought process on this is pretty straightforward. The NRL is a pretty even competition overall. Now obviously you have teams right at the top, and teams right at the bottom. And they are deservedly right at the top and right at the bottom, but it's this section right in the middle here, that really is pretty even and competitive. And that's where you get a bit of an advantage looking at outsiders, the teams that aren't quite the favourite, but they're not too far away from it. This works until it doesn't. Now, I wasn't quite sure where this point was last year. Last year, in fact, when I got you the video, we probably hit that point where it was time for it to change. The update on this, we do this until State of Origin. Now, when I brought you the video last year, I think we'd just had the first State of Origin game. You could probably wait until after State of Origin. In fact, if we look at the record from last year, we'd see that the first couple of games after last video were in fact winning selections. So you could wait until after State of Origin finishes. I looked at it and thought it's probably better to go when State of Origin starts. Once State of Origin is underway, we go. That's what I'm certainly looking at anyway. So at that point in time, we switch over to the favourites, but we go with the highest price. So still similar methodology, but looking at the favourites. Two reasons for this. One, the further into the season you get, the more settled the competition is, the better the market is going to be at figuring out who is the better team in each game. Secondly, State of Origin introduces an enormous amount of upheaval in the competition. You've got multiple weeks with multiple buys. You've got multiple weeks with players from all sorts of teams out for State of Origin, then coming back in, going out again. You've got injuries to players in State of Origin. You've got teams that are bringing players up from the reserves who may actually find that they land a permanent spot in the team. So it brings a lot of uncertainty, and it tends to favour the teams that have been doing well. So hence the reason at State of Origin time, that's where we go and we make the change. Now, if we have a look at some results from that. So this here is the results from the selection criteria that I brought you last year. You can see it went really well in the first half and kind of started to fall off in the second. Did all right towards the end of the season, which helped. Now, just as a reminder, I didn't manage to get every group in last year. There were plenty of times where I just didn't have the time to get to the group before it started. Other times where I plain forgot that it was happening. So this isn't a full season, but it's most of a season. And yeah, you can see in the second half it did kind of fall off a bit. It got lucky at the end of the season with a few wins, and that helped to put it back into profit. But $1.81 profit, having bet $133 through that time, is sort of not great. 50% strike rate though, so the system is reasonable. Let's have a look at how this goes if we make the change at State of Origin. And you can see instead of being a $1 profit, it's a $21 profit. It's a 70% strike rate. And we've actually bet less. Instead of the, $133, we've bet $108 instead to make that $21. So we've bet less, we've had more wins, we've made more. So it tends to work. Now, yeah, it fell off just a little bit at the end of the season with those few losses there. It had been up $28 before that. This is looking at a $1 base stake, incidentally. But, yeah, it did quite well overall. So let's have a look at the AFL. And the AFL selection criteria, well, I had been trying the same thing. Didn't work. And honestly, I didn't expect it to work. The AFL is not as even a competition as the NRL. You have a higher proportion of good teams, a higher proportion of low teams. You don't have so many middling teams. so it's not as even a competition, so I didn't really expect that other selection criteria to work. So instead, for the whole season, best off going highest priced favourite in the group. Now let's have a look at how that would have played out last year. So this is the selection criteria with the, now before I do this, you can see there's actually only a handful of matches. I really only did this for a little bit of the season because it was very clear it wasn't working. But this is the selection criteria looking at the non-favourites. You can see it just, it had a few wins, but ultimately it didn't work here. $21 bet, $4.64 loss, only a 31% strike rate. We move on to, if we're picking the non-favourites, well, that's better. $21 bet, $7.36 profit, 69% strike rate. That certainly worked a lot better, so that seems to be a better system for the AFL. So, how does this look if we're actually placing the bets on these matches in these groups? Well, I'd recorded making the selections a couple rounds ago, so let's have a look. So this here, we're looking at the rugby league to start with, so the NRL. So in Betfair here, we'll just narrow this down to just the NRL. And we're looking at Saturday the 14th of March. You can see we've got the 3 games here. Now we've got a non-favourite at $2.52, being the Cowboys. They happen to be the lowest priced non-favourite, so we'll place that bet there. Now that was, at that point in time, the selection, the staking criteria required a $10 bet there on them. So I was looking at, this is a $5 base stake, so that was a $10 bet on the Cowboys as the lowest priced non-favourite in that round, in that group, and that was at that price of $2.52. Now, when you put this into hard and soft staking, by default it shows up in the results as a loss until you actually set it otherwise. So if we go to the AFL, and we're starting off here, we're looking at a $10 bet for this one. In this group, we're looking for the highest priced favourite. So $1.36, $1.51, $1.48, $1.66. So Collingwood here at $1.66 would in fact be the favourite. So we put the $10 on that one there, and then we'll put it into the hard and soft staking cloud system here. And as I said, when you first put something into hard and soft staking, by default it shows up as a loss until you tell it otherwise. It gives you a bit of an indication of what you've spent. Once you tell it whether it's win or loss, then obviously you can continue working with it. So how are things looking for the current seasons? Well, let's have a look at the current seasons. Now, the NRL, at the moment, I've been doing $5 base stake here. Now, Betfair's commission on the NRL is a bit higher than some other things because 10%, simply because the NRL does charge them a little bit more to be able to bet on their competition. The AFL is a lower commission rate. At the moment, so far, sitting at 56% strike rate, and there's been $23 profit. You can see it's had a bit of a cycle of wins and losses, but overall it's doing all right. Now we can see this is the bets so far. First round did quite well, 2 wins, 1 loss. Second round we can see 2 wins, 1 loss. Third round, 1 win, 2 losses. Overall, doing pretty well. The AFL has not got off to as good a start. Started off quite well. The last little while hasn't been so good, but I do expect that to come back. It's not entirely surprising that the start of the season is a little bit rocky. You'd kind of expect that. Once you're a few rounds in, things generally tend to settle down a bit. So I'm not surprised that this has been a little bit of a rougher start for the AFL, but I'm quite confident that it will come back. And if you've been watching my videos for a while, you know I don't expect everything to be just a straight line up. Things will be rocky from time to time. Just as long as they go up overall, that's fine. But you know that's just the way things go. So that's an update on staking an update on selection criteria for AFL and NRL in hard and soft staking. Of course, there's a link to hard and soft staking in the description below, and hopefully this is of some use to you. And of course, you might have your own selection criteria for AFL and NRL, and you might find that hard and soft staking works just as well for that, or maybe even better. As I noted in the last video, I haven't looked at rugby league in the UK. I haven't looked at English Super League. I don't know how the selection criteria would work for that. Maybe it would work, maybe it wouldn't. I really don't know enough about that competition to give you an opinion on it. But it's something to look at, I suppose. But find the time. You know, there's only so many hours in the day. Anyway, I will see you again soon. Until then, happy punting.